All right, well, welcome everyone to Introduction to Chemical Sensitivity and the New Home Construction Process. This course is approved for one continuing education unit, GBCI, AIA-HSW, AIBD, certified green professionals, and may be applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Today I will be your host and moderator. My name is Brett Little and I'm the Executive Director here at the Green Home Institute. Green Home Institute is a nonprofit. We're celebrating 15 years this year, and we have a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and the construction of the places we live. You can check us out at greenhomeinstitute.org if you haven't been there yet. Got to thank our Platinum Plus sponsor, Andersen Windows and Doors and Renewable by Andersen. Check them out for all your new home construction and renovation needs for all your fenestrations. As well as a huge shout out to our 2015 sponsors, Cake Systems, Black Locust Lumber, and Warm Board. And then from an indoor air quality standpoint, Panasonic can help with all of your ventilation needs, rehabs, new, multifamily, even setting up a system that you can completely avoid ducts and use it to move air around. And then, of course, Certainteed by St. Gobain and their Air Renew product, a drywall that actually eats formaldehyde out of the air. You got to check that out. You support greener homes. You can become a member, help keep these sessions free, get discounts on on-demand and in-person courses that we host in the Midwest, and get discounts on your green certification projects as well. All right, so with that, we're going to get started on the chemical sensitivity and the new home building process. Today we have two speakers. Real excited to be hearing from both of them. First is Andrew Pace, an entrepreneur in the Milwaukee suburb of Waukesha, Wisconsin. And for the past 25 years, he has studied and dealt in green and healthy home building and improvement products and has earned a reputation as a national expert on such projects. Along with being profiled in numerous publications, he has authored several articles about construction of healthy homes, which have been published in regional and national magazines such as Environmental Design and Construction, Ecological Home Ideas, and Paint Dealer magazines. Also excited to have Kelsey Holt, a lead green associate. She is the lead interior designer for the Green Design Center in Waukesha, Wisconsin. She began as an intern in 2009 while pursuing her interior design degree from WCTC. And after her graduation from University of Wisconsin-Stout in 2012 with her degree in sustainable management, she joined the GDC family. She has been recognized with an Emerging Professionals Top 5 Under 5 Award in contributions to the advancement of profession in the chair, and is the chair of ASID Wisconsin Sustainability Advocacy Committee, as well as just recently joined the board of the Wisconsin Green Building Alliance. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Kelsey. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, Brett, thank you so much for inviting us to speak today, and I hope that everybody can hear us all right. Today what we want to talk about is chemical sensitivity in the new home building process. This is a topic that we've been at for, as Brett said, 25 years now. And while it can get very in-depth from customer to customer, what we wanted to do is give kind of a primer to how we approach this with our clients, and use this as kind of a springboard for possible presentations coming up early next year about more detail when it comes to chemical sensitivity. Now with this, as Kelsey and I are presenting throughout this seminar, if you do have questions specific to what we're talking about, I'll try to address them at that moment so it's still fresh in everybody's mind. If it's something that might be a little bit off topic, I'll try to save that to the end. We'll make sure to give plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So here's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, history of my company. I think it's pretty crucial to find out for you to know how we developed our company so that you know why we pursued what we pursued. We're going to talk about greenwashing. I know everybody hears this topic all the time in our industry, but I think that if you understand what greenwashing is from our perspective, it'll take a little bit of a different thought process for you. Green credibility and returning a green dollar investment, kind of self-explanatory. Then we're going to delve into healthy home and multiple chemical sensitivity. We'll talk about some of the customers that we deal with to give you some real good anecdotal information, and then a program that we use to help validate these products with our clients called Degree of Green. So let's talk about the history of our company. I started with a family business of commercial construction material supply back in 1989. At the point I was working with some of the largest architectural and engineering firms in the United States, writing specifications and detailing products for projects. In 1992, I was working on a project in Milwaukee. It was a below-grade parking structure. And we were supplying a water-based epoxy coating system for the concrete deck to keep it from deteriorating. After our workers, our crew applied just the primer coat, the water-based epoxy primer, we started getting phone calls from people living in the condos above complaining of the fumes. Matter of fact, one of those people calling was the office of a United States Senator. And obviously, you know, it's important for everybody to have a good indoor air quality, but when the United States Senator calls, then you listen extra hard. But most importantly, we actually had 3 of our own workers taken to the hospital because of inhalation complications because of that so-called water-based epoxy coating. And again, this is 1992. We thought that water-based meant safe. So at that point, we started doing research on what we could use to finish up the project that wouldn't, again, poison our customers and poison our own workers. And we started doing research on a syndrome, sick building syndrome, environmental illness, multiple chemical sensitivity. So in 1993, we launched a company called Safe Building Solutions to address the concerns of folks with chemical sensitivity. Now, at that point, I'd say that our customer base was probably 95% people who had chemical sensitivity. They couldn't walk into the perfume aisle of a department store without getting a headache, or they wouldn't even wait until the can of paint was open before they got a headache. And then we had 5% of our customer base that were what we would call environmentally aware. Fast forward to 2009, we reinvented a company called Green Design Center, and at that point we probably had 50% of our customer base being multiply chemically sensitive and 50% of our customer base just being environmentally aware.
Greenwashing has become a common term now that everyone understands, and as the design community evolves, the health aspect of things is becoming a new key word that everyone is looking for. So everyone has green or now new health attributes to their products that they didn't necessarily have before. And so we just wanted to kind of break down some of the different ways people are greenwashing so that you can recognize where you need to look for more information. The biggest thing to really do when looking at a product that has green or healthy attributes is look for the story behind the story. People with chemical sensitivities are always going to ask you 2 steps further as far as content, usage, reuse, past life attributes of a product. So it's always good to know the story behind the story. If everything is green, then nothing is green. And probably the most common misconception when it comes to greenwashing from a multiple chemical sensitivity standpoint is that natural means healthy. Just because it's natural does not necessarily make it healthy, and a lot of people understand that, but it needs to be addressed. Asbestos, for example, is natural. That does not make it healthy. The internal bias decision. So if you look at different rating systems used to look at products, if it's created by the own product's manufacturers, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a reliable source.
Yeah, we see that an awful lot in our industry where a manufacturer will put a picture of a leaf on a label and call it, green this or safe that, and it's basically their own internal marketing department developing a program to make their own product look good. So it's not third-party certified. A good example of that is the carpet, the CRI, Carpet and Rug Institute, their own green labeling program. I mean, that program is, the Carpet and Rug Institute is made up of carpet manufacturers. And the carpet manufacturers got together and created their own green label system without a third party. Now, that's obviously changing with the Floor Score products, which is fantastic. We're happy to see that. But just look for those labels that don't have a third party reviewer. So some examples of greenwashing that we see on an everyday basis. Look at large retailers. There's a large clothing, and we're not going to talk about detail too much, but there's a large clothing retailer that years ago came out with a line of clothing for their young adults. It was called like their Organic Choice. And what they said was that on every label, 34% of all fabrics came from organically sourced cotton. Now, interestingly enough, the national average for clothing manufacturers is 34% organic content, whether they know it or not. So they found out about this, and they use this as a way to market their product. There's a large big box home improvement center that years ago started putting green labels on a variety of materials.
One of their one of their labels was that their electric chainsaw was more energy efficient than their gas chainsaw, saying that because it did not use gas, that made the electric option a better choice. Think a couple steps down the road, where's that electricity coming from? There's all these little single attributes that companies use to make their products seem better than other alternatives or better than their own alternatives without giving you the full picture. A lot of companies resist having a green line or a healthy line or completely changing the way they do things because then they would have to explain why everything they've been doing in the past wasn't healthy or wasn't green. So they just use single attributes or little tidbits of information to get you thinking that this new product, which might be the same product with a different label on it, is better than the original.
And that's a really good point, Kelsey. That brings up a manufacturer of fiberglass insulation several years ago that came out with a new formaldehyde-free fiberglass product. And within a month, they had to take out full-page ads and trade publications saying that we did not do this because of human health concerns. We did it because it's a better resin, it's less expensive, we're keeping the cost down for you, it's a better performing product. So they really had to backtrack on that first bit of greenwashing they had about this being a new formaldehyde-free, safe product. So that really hits home that whole, be careful what you say. And now, we're spending a lot of time talking about greenwashing because when you're dealing with customers with chemical sensitivity, this is what they look at every single day. These are customers, and we have thousands of customers that call us on a regular basis asking about certain products or methods or systems and wondering why they always get this line of greenwashing from the manufacturers and from their contractors when all they're trying to do is find out if the product is going to be safe for them. So one of the biggest things we see in our industry is greenwashing about VOCs. If I took a poll right now that everybody in attendance knew what a VOC was, I'm sure you all do, but let me just describe it to you in a little bit more detail and let you know where our customers are coming from. A VOC is a volatile organic compound. A volatile organic compound is a carbon-based molecule that's readily vaporized at room temperature that could contribute to outdoor air pollution by reacting with nitrogen and UV in the atmosphere. That is the official EPA definition.
Most people think that zero VOC means it's healthy, just like because it's natural, it must be healthy. And that is not the case with VOCs. As Andy said, VOCs are regulated for outdoor air pollution, not for human health. But because there hasn't been a good metric for looking at products from a human health standpoint, VOCs have taken that place and have in turn probably created more problems than they've solved, because people assume that if they have a zero VOC product that it's healthy, and then they do not treat it as if they need to wear ventilation and so forth when using products.
So when customers call up and say, we're looking for a paint, for instance, and we wanted zero VOC, we always ask the question, well, why do you want a zero VOC? The number one answer is, well, because I want the safest thing available. And our response is, well, you can open up a gallon of acetone, and legally that's considered zero VOC, because there's a list of 37 chemicals that the EPA deems as unregulated because they don't technically react with nitrogen UV, create low-level smog. So they're on an exemption list. That exemption list includes chemicals such as acetone, ammonia, butyl acetate, trichloroethane, and a variety of others. So like Kelsey said earlier, that just because something's natural doesn't mean it's safe. Just because something's zero VOC does not mean it's safe.
There is a difference between the toxicity level of a product and the VOC level of the product, and there's a lot of education that needs to come between you and your customers to make sure that everyone understands the differences and how to proceed on product selection moving forward.
So let me just a little bit more on the VOC thing before we move to the next slide. Years ago, there was a paint manufacturer that focuses on healthy products that we work with, that started back in 1980, that used propylene glycol in their paint formulation. Most manufacturers used ethylene glycol. Ethylene glycol is antifreeze. It's highly toxic to humans and animals. It's a VOC. This particular manufacturer used propylene glycol. Propylene glycol is an FDA-approved food-grade additive used in cakes and brownies to keep them moist. It's used in vanilla extract and used in toothpaste. It's also considered a VOC, but completely toxin-free, especially in the form that it's in. Yet the EPA deems both to be in that broad brush as being VOCs, therefore they cannot be used. So when most manufacturers then had to reformulate to take out their ethylene glycol, they added back in ammonia, acetone, butyl acetate, and derivatives of those in order to meet the regulations. This other manufacturer actually just increased the amount of resin and water to meet the regulation. More expensive, but that's how they had to do it.
Another point on testing for VOCs is products are usually tested in their liquid state. And so companies are able to use precursors to toxic chemicals and to VOCs because when they're tested in its liquid state, those chemicals don't register. As soon as the product is applied and begins to cure, the chemical reaction occurs and these now toxic chemicals are created and then are off-gassing in your space. But when it was tested, those were undetectable.
Right, so that's something to look for. Formaldehyde is a huge one. We'll get to this in a little bit, but most manufacturers these days actually use formaldehyde precursors that in the liquid state are undetectable. When you put it on the wall, they create formaldehyde during the cure. So this leads to that green credibility. You need to look for that, the definition. And as Kelsey says, look for that story behind the story. Be really careful about these manufacturers and companies that are claiming green for this or that really have no impact on what your customer is looking for. If your customer is looking for healthy, obviously the chemically sensitive customer is looking for healthy, then it really doesn't matter to them that the flooring material you're using is from reclaimed lumber. Matter of fact, that may actually be worse because that reclaimed lumber might be soaked with a chemical that you can't get out of the wood. So be very careful about those claims. And realize this, that customers today, all customers who are interested in buying green, are only buying green for two reasons. Number one is improved bottom line. You know, that energy savings. and the cost of operation of the building is lower. And the second is improved quality of life. This is the customer looking for healthier materials, a healthier indoor air quality, materials that last longer so they don't have to replace them as often. So a few years ago, I was writing for a magazine, and I wrote an article about the emergence of the healthy home. And this is actually right after the big episode with the tainted Chinese drywall that we got after Katrina and other episodes in this country where we're finding formaldehyde levels that are vastly above safe levels. I remember after Katrina when FEMA sent all those trailers down to New Orleans for people who were displaced their homes, people were getting sicker inside the trailers, and they found out it's because those trailers were manufactured with OSB and plywood that is just soaked with high levels of formaldehyde. So that's one of those things we're careful what you ask for. So green fatigue. People actually were getting this green fatigue where they're sick and tired of manufacturers and contractors claiming green when it really didn't meet one of those two elements we talked about. If everything is green, nothing's green, so what's next? The LOHAS consumer, this demographic that was created, which stands for Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability, was demanding healthier products. The LOHAS customer base, for those of you who don't know, again, stands for Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. Roughly 15% of the United States population falls within this customer base with a spending power of over $290 billion. This demographic is expected to rise dramatically, and it is rising. This demographic was actually created by a marketing company that took a book called The Cultural Creatives that was written by a sociologist named Dr. Paul Ray. He did years of research and found out that there was this large group of people in the world that were a bit higher educated, a bit higher in household income, that have more of an affinity towards music and the arts, that took care of themselves. They ate healthier. They did yoga and Pilates and so forth. And this is the book that created the demographic. Women definitely are the driving decision makers. In our customer base, we're looking at 75% of our customers are female because they are typically the person in the household who is looking to nurture the family more so. And I hate to be, paint that broad brush, but it is really the case, is that, us guys are more likely to say, yeah, I've got a headache, but yeah, who knows what it's from. And where the woman of the household says, I've got a headache, and I bet it's because my husband was painting with, a spray paint yesterday.
All right, now on to multiple chemical sensitivities. MCS is finally a recognized chronic reoccurring disease caused by a person's inability to tolerate an environmental chemical or class of foreign chemicals. It's now recognized by the National Institute of Health. For many years, this was just all in people's heads, and quite honestly, people thought they were crazy. It couldn't possibly be the paint or the new carpet that's giving you a headache and making you sick. Now, finally, as more research is being done, people are realizing exactly what it is that's making them sick. It's estimated that about 25% of the U.S. population has some form of chemical sensitivity, but most people don't recognize it or acknowledge that there is a cause beyond just being stressed out and having a headache today. It could be as simple as having a reaction to a new laundry detergent or not being able to tolerate the new dish soap. Things so simple that we don't even realize it. The air freshener plugged in your office. All sorts of little things that do count as chemical sensitivities that people don't recognize. There are three main ways, though, that people become chemically sensitive. The first is massive exposure. The best example to show massive exposure would be the EPA headquarters 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's roughly in the early 90s, the EPA headquarters in D.C., they had installed, obviously, with the new headquarters, new carpeting throughout the building. And within days of opening up that new facility,
1,000 people or so left sick, and now there are still actually people on disability today because of that massive exposure. The next cause would be a life-changing event. This could be something like childbirth, car accident, surgery, something that really changes your chemical makeup. And then the most common way is actually low-level exposure over a long period of time. And the best way to visualize that is to visualize everyone having a 55-gallon drum inside their body. And everyone's drum fills up a little bit differently as far as the chemicals it's able to process and how quickly. But over time, that drum fills up and overflows, and that's when the chemical sensitivities become acknowledged.
And so it's becoming sensitive to a certain chemical, like Kelsey said, that one thing that put them over the edge. Now, this can happen at any point of their life. They can be a child, you can be an adult. I didn't have seasonal allergies until I turned 30 years old. Before that, I was unaffected by allergies. So my 55-gallon drum filled up at 30 years old. I also never had chemical sensitivities myself, but now there are certain products, certain soaps that I can't use without basically having a head-to-toe rash. So, the MCS customer.
MCS customers are a different category of customers to work with from a design build standpoint. There is a different level of hand-holding that needs to be taken into consideration with these customers because they are going to ask for the story behind the story, and chances are they're going to fact-check your story behind the story and call the manufacturer and ask for referrals and references. And if everyone isn't using the exact same terminology, they're going to have more questions. Why is a top coat different than a seal coat? Simple things that mean the same thing to all of us, in the end, mean totally different things to the customer. And so those details need to be taken into consideration. When you're working with a customer, whether it be a simple bathroom remodel or a new home build, it's critical to test each and every element going into the space. Things that you might not even think about. The grout sealer. What happens when the tile is cut and if that dust has a reaction compared to the solid tile itself. The other thing is each customer is different. Each person with chemical sensitivities is going to react to different things. For most people with MCS, formaldehyde will be a trigger. Most people, whether or not they have MCS, will react to formaldehyde. However, different chemicals create different triggers. Plant oils are also a big thing to consider. So that's where, again, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's healthy or safe. Things like linseed oil and hemp oil sound like great alternatives to stains and finishes. However, these could create more issues in the long run because people cannot process the oils the way they can with other off-gassing of simpler products.
Right, so you have to be careful about how you don't want to paint yourself into a corner. And so if you have customers who are very sensitive, you can't say, well, we're going to use a natural linoleum if they have a sensitivity. And the problem is with a natural linoleum, because it contains linseed oil and pine resin, it could be problematic for somebody with severe chemical sensitivity. Not everybody, but some people. And I'll say this kind of as a general statement for everything we're talking about today. This is based upon our 25 years of working with chemically sensitive people, thousands of people across the country. And I can say without a doubt that there is no one product or no one system that everybody can use without a problem, honestly. And this is why it is crucial to test. I know that there is a couple of people in this country who were really good consultants for folks with chemical sensitivity, and they literally got sued out of business, not because they were giving bad information. It's because the information they were given to customers wasn't perfect for their situation, and they were just doing their best. They were giving their best information they could, but everybody is a little different. And it might seem really redundant, or it might seem really detailed, the minutia of this, but you need to have these customers test everything all the way down to the screws and bolts that hold the house together, just to make sure when they walk on the job site, if they smell something that they didn't recognize and have a reaction, you need to be covered for that. So needing to document everything that's in there, understanding exactly where your client is coming from, really, really important. So we're going to give some material examples here. This may raise a lot of questions from people, so we're going to try to keep this as generic as possible. I know with these CEU events, we don't really want to talk about manufacturers, but sometimes we kind of have to drop a name or two. So let's talk about paint, because this is what everybody sees in their home. This is usually the last thing that's done in a new home, and it's the first thing that people will react to. So with paints, finishes, stains, and so forth, it's crucial to find products that are not just low or zero VOC like we talked about before, but are truly free of health hazards and toxins. There are a few brands out there. I'll be happy to pass some information along to those to folks who are interested after this.
It's important to keep in mind, too, that there are paints available that are made from all plant oils and completely natural. But then back to what people's triggers might be, again, although it might be an alternative paint, that doesn't mean it's going to be a good option for them. And that's where the education comes in as far as which products are going to be well fit for them and why testing is so important. You're going to have customers that are very adamant that they want this natural paint and just do it anyways until they test it and find out that actually it's a terrible option for them.
You know, a question came up about fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia, from a medical standpoint, up to this point has been basically a catch-all for things that doctors or physical therapists didn't understand. And this is now actually, a lot of the research that's coming out now is showing that fibromyalgia and chemical sensitivity actually go hand in hand. So they do have actual or treatable symptoms, but we're finding that it's actually related to their environment and to their diet. So see this coming out in the next couple of years from not only holistic healthcare practitioners, but from the traditional MDs, that fibro is related specifically to diet and environment. Framing. This comes up all the time from customers that are looking to build a new home. What do you recommend for a framing system? Well, honestly, our recommendation, let's not include cost in this right now. Our recommendation is insulated concrete form. And I'm sure I'm going to meet a lot of people who will give me their opinion about this. But look at it this way. Concrete, if you don't use any admixtures, does not outgas. Concrete does contain lime. Lime is an airborne irritant, yes, but that can be controlled. It's also in between two layers of polystyrene, which does not outgas. It truly is the safest form of construction for people with chemical sensitivity, not even from a material standpoint, but from the fact that because of the materials that are used, there is no possibility of mold in a cavity wall. There's nothing in it that is a food source for mold. I know there's a lot of discussion about SIPs. There's discussion about methods of passive house construction using a double wall assembly. The fact of the matter is that those methods have to use usually OSB, which off-gases formaldehyde. Some OSB uses phenyl formaldehyde, some use urea formaldehyde. There's a big difference between the two, where phenyl formaldehyde is about 100 times less likely to become airborne, but it's still problematic for people with chemical sensitivity. And Michael, the question about styrene does outgas if it's cut. Yeah, if you use a hot knife to cut it, which is usually the method done in the field, the smoke is problematic. But from a cured standpoint, and once that that cut is cooled down and cured, it does not outgas. So I'm going to talk about roofing for a second here, because this usually one of those areas where we do some value engineering, some healthy value engineering on a project. If we've got X amount of money in the budget and we are looking at materials for the entire home, roofing is one of those things where we'll kind of leave that to the end as far as the actual material, whether it's going to be a 30-year dimensional shingle or it's going to be a metal roof. If we've got money in the budget for it, we're going to go to a metal roof from an environmental standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint. Typically, if the home is built properly, if you've got proper ventilation in the attic, the roofing material itself is not going to be problematic inside of the home. I'm going to just cut on a couple of key points here. Yes, the key is the hot knife for the ICF. I mean, if you use a razor blade to cut styrofoam, you're not heating it up, and therefore it's not releasing any chemical. The key is the hot knife if you're melting it, because any plastic that's being melted actually creates cyanide gas. So that's whether it's styrofoam, polystyrene, or visqueen. So you got to be careful about that. And then regarding EMFs itself, I'm not really going to delve into that too much, because you've got a couple of really good seminar topics on that, but that is something to consider with people with chemical sensitivity. That's not really our main focus, but every customer that we work with on a consulting basis, this is something that we'll actually bring in a professional to discuss. So the system that we use every day to help us determine whether a product or not is going to be safe for our customers is a system called Degree of Green.
We have customers coming into the showroom asking us questions about products, and everyone still really uses the term green, no matter what kind of green they're looking for. And so we decided to divide it up and make it an easier analysis for them to really determine what type of green they're looking for. So human health is obviously the most important one as far as looking at chemical sensitivities. People coming in looking for healthy products are looking for things with low toxicity, don't need harsh chemicals to clean or seal, things of that nature. The next group of people coming in is looking for true environmentally green products. These are people looking for recycled content and the healthy environmental story, FSC certified products and so forth. And the final customer is coming in looking for an overall sustainability, and these are really kind of the catch-all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's somebody looking for sustainability. Let me step back and forward to, sorry, I'll go back, I'm sorry, to this slide. Let me tell you the three customers that walk into one of our showrooms across the country. The first customer is coming in from that human health standpoint, and they walk in, they say, we're building a new home, we've got a 7-year-old with autism, we're trying to find materials that are healthy for our son, because he can't be around. If you ever worked with an autistic child, you know that they react severely to chemical outgassing. So we're finding floor materials that don't have any chemical outgassing. We're using hard, cleanable surfaces in that home.
Or products that have actual health benefits, helping purify the air instead of standard paints and so forth.
Second customer walks into the showroom and says, we're not building a home, we bought an old home, we want to remodel it. And because, you know, I've been on this earth for 55 years, I've been a burden to the earth for 55 years, I want to remodel a home that's completely done out of recycled, repurposed, renewed product. You know, we're going to the Habitat Restore and we're getting cabinetry from them. We're getting barn wood for flooring and siding. This customer doesn't really concern themselves as much with the human health aspect. They're looking at green from the standpoint of, I don't want to be a burden to the earth. Third customer walks in and says, I want to build a house with the lowest carbon footprint. You know, obviously, your energy efficiency, your materials that are made locally from locally sourced ingredients, products that have low embodied energy in the manufacturing and in the use. Out of those three customers, which one's wrong? Which one's right? What we're saying is every customer who's looking for green has a different story, and we can't rely on the big box stores. Heck, we can't even rely on our own industry so-called experts to tell us what's green for that customer. So what we do is we have a personal degree of green test, which I will be happy to send all of you. Brett's going to supply me with an email list for all of you after this. I will send you a personal copy, and we'll determine what your personal degree of green is. And this is how you can also help your clients determine their personal degree of green. You'll find out that your clients might be a combination of all three, but they're always going to be strongest in one.
There is no perfect product, which was mentioned before. So you're really going to need to look at the degree of green and what your customers' true needs are and pick products based on that.
So a question came in earlier that I'll address now about the paint line. I'm a big supporter of a brand called AFM, American Formulated Manufacturing. AFM started in 1980. It was the first product line I ever carried in 1993. AFM had been a very small company in San Diego, California, that produced materials specifically for people with chemical sensitivity. A backstory to that company, the original founder of the company, Nestor No, he actually was a paint chemist himself, and he developed cancer because of the materials that he was inventing for the industry. And he made it his life-ending mission, literally his life-ending mission, to create formulations that were less toxic. And while they make paint, they make 45 other products designed to help seal up chemical outgassing in a home. And that is the Safeco brand, yes. Excuse me. Question came in about Green Guard certification. Be careful with these, what I call the third-party certifiers or the gatekeepers in our industry. The gatekeepers in our industry would be Green Guard, Green Seal, SCS. Yes, they are third-party certifiers. These third-party certifiers basically tell you whether or not a product is okay to use on a LEED certified building. And I can say this without any doubt, because I've been on the board of directors of the Wisconsin affiliate of the USGVC. Kelsey is currently on the board of the USGVC here in Wisconsin. LEED is a program developed for energy efficiency, and they don't really delve into human health whatsoever. I know people will say, yes, but what about the new LEED V4?
There is no good metric to measure human health in products. So you need to really look at what you're using and what customers are able to tolerate. And when it comes down to it, you also need to follow the money. There are companies that pay to be certified by these companies or have huge endorsements, and that's how they get the certification. Right.
And you know, the third-party certifiers, they're a pay-to-play system. And what I mean by that is you can take the test as often as you want until you come up with the results that you like, and you put that on your literature. The large companies can afford it. The small companies can't. So it really is a gatekeeper in our industry. There are other brands out there that consider themselves, again, zero VOC. YOLO is a brand. Benjamin Moore has their Sherwin-Williams has theirs. All these brands are called zero VOC. None of them market their products to be safe for humans. They market their products to be environmentally friendly, air safe, all these buzzwords that the EPA likes to use, but none of them have to do with human health. So, you know, we rely on AFM. And again, you may have opinions about the company. I mean, it's been around for a long time, so they have a lot of customers, and they probably have a lot of folks that used it and didn't have the best results. But generally speaking, 95% of the time, that is the brand that we turn to and that we rely on. The only other brand that was out in the last 10 years that marketed towards people as a human-friendly product is a brand called Mythic. And Mythic is no longer in production. Matter of fact, Mythic used to be called American Pride, and they changed their marketing with a huge dollar investment to call them products non-toxic, but they lost their investment and they no longer produce product. So we really have to rely on Safecoat. We're independent. We can sell anybody's product, but again, we rely on those thousands of customers over the last 30 years that use Safecoat without a problem. Are there any other questions regarding any of our slides or any materials you'd like to ask?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Kelsey. We definitely got some more time here for questions. If we do end up going a little bit over, are you guys interested in sticking around to answer some more questions?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great, great. So I think when Michael here has another question in regards to, maybe you can ask that again, human-based third-party certification.
Sure. So is there a human health-based third-party certification system?
There isn't, and again, that comes back to the fact that there is not a great metric for healthy.
Yeah, so I'll talk about a couple of systems that are out there right now. There's the Pharos Project. There's the environmental and the health declaration forms. The problem with this, and I guess alluding to LEAD v4, is that manufacturers that are using the health declaration pages, this is based on their information. It's garbage in, garbage out. There is no third-party certifier that USGBC requires. So manufacturers are basically listing what they want to list.
Red List, Michael, is a good start. However, there are some key chemicals that have not made it onto Red List yet. The first one that comes to mind is styrene butadiene rubber, which is used in most carpet manufacturing to adhere the carpet to the backing itself. That new carpet smell that you notice is the styrene butadiene rubber, or SBR.
And on that note, the Red List has what, 70, 80 chemicals. There's 88,000 chemicals right now in the use in the production of building materials. 88,000 chemicals, and there's less than 100 that are on a red list. Out of those 88,000 chemicals, the EPA has only deemed 3% as tested, and very few of them have actually been banned for use in this country.
As far as testing products are concerned, there's a couple different things you can do. As far as testing in an overall space and what equipment should be used, you really need to know which specific chemicals you're testing for. There are different systems out there to test for EMF, to test for mold, to test for formaldehyde, but they're all specific processes to the specific chemicals. So it would almost come back to having your customer know which chemicals they trigger or are triggers for them, and doctors are able to test for that for the most part. Barbara, your comment or question about testing products one-on-one, it's going to depend on the type of product and what the customer is up for. If you're testing a cork or a strand woven bamboo sample, a lot of customers with chemical sensitivities will ask for a cutoff, and they'll actually sleep with it next to or under their pillow for a couple of nights to see if they have any reaction. It's important to make sure that there aren't any other triggers around them. So it might be as simple as going into a clean room or a safe room for them and just smelling the product a couple of times over the course of the day. Things like paints and coatings you need to test periodically throughout the process. So again, just like products are tested in its liquid state, they may or may not have a reaction then, but through the curing process, it could have a different reaction. So you'll need to test liquid state as it's curing and once it's reached a full cure. And this can be different for each customer. If your customer has severe chemical sensitivities, it would be our recommendation that they are not in the space when any construction or remodeling is happening, and to allow that air to be purified before they re-enter the space. And that would mean that all products have reached a full cure as well.
And so on that note, during the construction process, we will have large air purification systems in the space throughout construction. We will mandate that every worker on that job site does not smoke on the job site, that they don't smoke in their car on the way to the job site, because that smoke contains 2,000 chemicals that will carry with them. They don't wear cologne, they don't wear perfume, they're not wearing hairspray. It's basically, these workers are brought to the job site in Tyvek suits. And now this is obviously for that extreme customer, but we will go to that length if we need to, because this is what the customer requires. Keep in mind with chemical sensitivity, and I've been working with doctors that specialize this for years. The consensus is that a chemically sensitive customer can react to a chemical, or they can react to the fear of a chemical and have the exact same adrenaline response in the body. So they walk into a space, they see something, they smell something that they don't recognize, the body has the exact same adrenaline response and will have the same response, whether it's flu-like symptoms, headache, all the way to an anaphylactic shock, because of the fear of the unknown. So this is why Kelsey has pointed out, you've got to have the customer test everything that goes in there. Even if it's a galvanized screw, make sure they're okay with it. Check it off the list. Move on to the next thing. We have a lot of customers that will take products to a physician or to an allergist and do a muscle test, the same way you would with pollen or ragweed.
Next question that I saw in regards to durability of products. I do think that eco or green products being less durable is a thing of the past, with exceptions, of course. If you're spending 99 cents a square foot on bamboo flooring, it's not going to be as durable as the $4.99 or $6.99 a square foot flooring, obviously depending on location and going pricing, but you do need to take all factors into consideration. Just because it's labeled green doesn't mean it's going to be less durable or even more expensive at this point. Most of the products that we work with, I would consider to be middle to high end as far as durability is concerned, but still in that medium price range. So we're not breaking anyone's budget by going healthy. If you want to spend 99 cents a square foot though, there's not going to be a lot of healthy, durable options for you.
Correct. And so questions are coming up about other studies that are done. How do you test? Honestly, there is no definitive way to do it right now. You can certainly look at organizations such as the Healthy Building Network. You can look at Environmental Building News. There are plenty of third-party journalistic type organizations that are studying product. Again, the Pharos Project is getting involved in this. Cradle to Cradle is getting involved in this, but there is no one definitive. So how do we really know? I mean, with a client, all we can do is go by what they're telling us, and we know this, that from the last 20-some years, we know what normally works. Kelsey and I have a really good starting point that we've developed over the years, and we feel it's a good place to start with our clients, and sometimes we have to modify that.
Question was brought up about quartz. Quartz as a countertop option is one of our first go-tos, depending on the look of the kitchen or bathroom we're trying to achieve. You do need to be careful about which quartz companies you work with, though. The highest quartz are 93% quartz, 7% resin, and they don't need to be sealed with anything toxic. They don't off-gas, incredibly low maintenance, which makes them a great option. However, there are companies using less quartz and more resin. You also need to be concerned about where it's coming from. Anything coming over from China needs to be sprayed with pesticides generally, whether the product itself or the container as a whole, and so you may not have control over what is ending up on that product in transport. So those are other factors to consider as well.
And also think about the fact that when quartz gets installed, usually put down a bead of a silicone or an adhesive around the periphery of the countertop. I can tell you from personal experience that Cambria, made up in Minnesota, they've actually they've tested and approved a couple of AFM Safe Coat caulking materials and adhesives to be used on their product. They're the only company that went that far for us. Comparing quartz to other countertop materials, I know the natural stone products are still really popular right now, and there was a bad story that came out several years ago about how granite contains radon. Well, again, follow the money with that, and you'll find out that story is actually propagated by a company that imports quartz materials from South America. So can granite have radon? Yes, 1 out of every 10,000 slabs probably has detectable levels of radon. The biggest problem with granite is that it has to be sealed using a solvent-based sealer. And it has to be done usually up to 2 to 3 times a year in order to keep that granite from staining. So like Kelsey said, quartz does not need to be sealed. Therefore, overall, it's going to be a healthier product to work with.
Well, this has been some great questions, great conversation. Do you guys mind sticking around? I got a few other questions and comments, if that's all right. Yeah, and for any of you all in the audience, feel free to stick around here if you can. Would love to have you still continue to ask some more questions. So one thing I wanted to mention too, the red list was brought up, and I wanted to clarify what that was for some of you folks out there who may not be familiar with it. It's used under a lot of different names, but I think the reference one here was actually the International Living Future Institute's red list, which actually only has about 12 chemicals on it, which are made up of several chemicals. And that is from the International Living Future Institute for a certification for their living building challenge. But anyway, so here's my question. So it seemed like there was some discussion about testing products, but then also this idea that every client is subjective, and so I just wanted to reaffirm that. And then also on that note, my understanding is that it's very, very difficult to be actually diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivity. Very rare that doctors would even make that diagnosis or even believe in it or know how to do it. I have heard, though, it is becoming more popular. Are there standards for that, for testing for people, and do you see that growing? And does something like that give you information you might need to help a client if they have those tests done and that diagnosis?
Yes, 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 and yes. Clients and doctors are starting to further recognize MCS and chemical sensitivities as a disease. There are very few ways to actually cure someone of multiple chemical sensitivity, but the testing that they're able to do is similar to an allergy test, and it allows them to see what kind of reaction they have to different chemicals. We do have some clients that have worked with their MDs and travel across the country because there are very few doctors that are doing true testing for MCS, but come back with 5, 6, 7-page reports about what their reaction was to different chemicals, different combinations of chemicals, and that's really a great point for us to jump off from to figure out which products to recommend. Kind of back to the natural paint versus the synthetic. if we know that they're going to react to linseed oil, we know we can avoid any product with linseed oil in it, and it becomes a process of elimination.
So Kelsey and I get asked to consult on projects all across the country, and so if they have a report like this, it makes our job a lot easier. The American Medical Association just in the last year has recognized MCS as a documented disease. They're not teaching it in schools. They're not really discussing it. It's kind of this, okay, we recognize it, but we don't know what to do with it. So we're going to recognize it, and as soon as some drug company comes up with a drug that is going to help, then maybe they'll actually start teaching about it. That's kind of my soapbox opinion. That said, there are physicians across the country that do specialize in this. Dr. Ray down in Texas has a clinic that not only tests for this, but also has a detoxification process for people with chemical sensitivity. In 25 years, I have one customer that has been cured, completely cured of chemical sensitivity. To me, it's one of those diseases that you can live with, and you can adjust your lifestyle, your living arrangement, your diet to live with this disease. But one person actually became cured, and he actually visited a physician out east, Dr. Grace Ziem, and through her detoxification process and diet protocol, he's been cured.
Great. Can you name again that doctor in Texas? And also, I think a lot of folks here on this call are in the Midwest. I had heard there was a doctor in Ann Arbor too. Maybe you guys know who that is, if you could name them.
There are physicians now across the country that are starting to deal with this. We deal with one in Flint, Michigan, Dr. Jill McDougall. But Dr. William Ray down in Texas, he's the one who, he has what's called the American Environmental Health Foundation. In Northern Illinois, there was the Randolph Clinic. Theron Randolph was one of the two physicians in the country that developed or coined the term multiple chemical sensitivity. He has since passed, but his clinic still lives on. There are allergists and physicians now who are starting to specialize in this because they realize that this is coming to the forefront because of the fact that, like you mentioned before, Brett, there's only a handful of chemicals on this red list. Does that mean that those are the only chemicals that are dangerous to us? Of course not. That just means that those are the only ones that the manufacturers and their lobbyists have allowed to be put on that red list.
Yeah, great point. Well, hey, I got one more question here, but for those of you who got to get going, I appreciate you sticking around here another second. Those of you looking for continuing education, a survey will be sent to you after this course. Even if you're not looking for CEUs, we really appreciate if you can take that survey. And then we'll also have this follow-up, what is your personal degree of green, heading your way as well. And for those of you asking questions about this, give us a day or two, go to our Learn channel on our website, and you'll be able to catch the recording here and share it, access it, review it anytime. So my last question before we wrap up here is more on the preventative side, and I know you guys spoke to some of this to some degree, and I know there's some programs that are geared towards to start the conversation. LEAD V4 may be a part of that. EPA's Indoor Air Plus program, Living Building Challenge requires you to actually do air quality testing after 9 months. But just, from a really broad standpoint, if a family was building a new home or potentially doing a major renovation, and nobody that you know of there has any MSC exposure, but was saying, what's the best thing I can do to prevent that low-level exposure over time? What would be some of your top 3, recommendations for them?
The first recommendation would be to avoid carpet altogether. There are some options available that are healthy carpets, but they collect dust mites and other irritants and so forth. So hard surface is really going to be the best way to start. And you have to think of what your largest surface areas are. So consider wall space. Making sure that you use a healthy wall covering is going to be a good start. It doesn't need to be paint. There are other products out there, natural clays, wall coverings, things like that, that don't off-gas, and some even have health benefits as far as helping purify the air. With that, another option would be to consider good air purification, whether that be individual room units, or if you're able to retrofit the existing to have good air purification for the entire space. One thing to consider with specifically with MCS, and I know your question was in disregard to, but people with multiple chemical sensitivity or other health issues, they've spent all of their money on health care. And so when it comes time to retrofit or remodel, budgets are limited. So as Andy mentioned before, there is some value engineering to make sure that the healthiest options are used throughout the space.
And so along the line of those products, Brett, and that's a good question. Like Kelsey said, avoid carpet. Generally speaking, carpet will off-gas for at least 22 years, and we know that only because that's when the test ended. Anderson Labs did a off-gassing test years ago and found that carpeting that's 22 years old can still off-gas enough to kill laboratory rats. So we avoid carpet when all possible. You know, if a customer wants something soft on her foot, we can do area rugs made from pure wool with no pesticides or chemical dyes. Obviously, the large areas, the painted surfaces, the finished surfaces. And the other thing is avoid, when all possible, any material that has formaldehyde. Formaldehyde has been and always will be the key trigger for people with chemical sensitivity, with severe sensitivities. So avoid formaldehyde. There's a formaldehyde-free alternative for just about anything inside the home. And if there isn't, then we have sealers that will specifically seal up that chemical outgassing. And then in regards to the air purification, question comes up all the time. We're building a new home. We're going to do an air-to-air heat exchange system. Is that good enough? No, it's not. If I were to give you one recommendation is I'd rather have you spend your money on a good air purification system rather than a heat exchange system. What good is it sucking in fresh air that's full of pollen, ragweed, and mold when you have and not purifying the air that's in the home existing? I'd rather have you purify that air and make sure it's always a quality indoor air than spend that money on a fresh air intake.
Well, this is great. Thank you, Andrew and Kelsey. We're gonna get wrapping up here. For those of you again listening live, make sure to take that quick survey that'll be coming your way. For those of you listening on demand, make sure to take your 10-question quiz here at the end to pick up your continuing education credits. I definitely think that there's a lot more room here to take a much deeper dive into some of these topics for another session, and so hopefully we'll be working with the Green Design Center, Kelsey and Andrew, to go a little bit further into this based on some of the feedback we get from you all. And so again, I really want to thank you two for your time. Thanks to the Green Design Center. Andrew, where can people contact you and learn a little bit more?
Best way to contact is the website, thegreendesignCenter.com. We also have another website called buildingforhealth.com. And you can contact Kelsey or myself if you have any questions. Our first name at thegreendesignCenter.com for email, or give us a call at 262-446-6702.
All right, thank you, Andrew Pace. Thank you, Kelsey Holtz. My name is Brett Little, Executive Director here at the Green Home Institute. Signing off. Everybody have a great week.
All right, thank you.